СВР, и в администрации президента. Он был главой.
I believe that all the right words are being said, but I have long been convinced that words alone are not enough. It is no coincidence that some time ago, following yet another escapade of the Kyiv terrorists, the president announced that we would now be carrying out massive, coordinated strikes on a regular basis. These strikes will target objectives whose condition directly affects the combat effectiveness of the armed forces of Ukraine. This task has been set by the Supreme Commander-in-Chief. Our armed forces are carrying it out and will continue to do so.
Moscow smolders and the Kremlin answers with thunder, as Vladimir Putin appears to unleash a relentless campaign of revenge on Ukraine that could push the war into a far deadlier phase. After what officials describe as Moscow's darkest day, Russian leaders pledge wave after wave of retaliatory strikes, promising sustained, escalating attacks aimed at inflicting maximum damage. In the wake of a dramatic drone onslaught, Russia is now threatening regular, massive strikes, a blunt warning that heavy bombardment may become the new norm. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warns that Ukraine will face regular shockwaves of Russian firepower, signaling an ongoing campaign of high-intensity strikes intended to wear down Kyiv's defenses. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned that Russia will unleash massive strikes on targets linked to Ukraine's military infrastructure, signaling a deliberate campaign to dismantle Kyiv's ability to sustain frontline operations. Moscow vowed fierce retaliation after suffering what it called Ukraine's biggest ever drone attack, promising a harsh, proportionate response aimed at deterring further assaults. On June 18th, Ukraine launched nearly 200 drones in its largest ever assault on the Russian capital, an unprecedented strike that exposed gaps in Moscow's air defenses and stunned observers worldwide. Immediately following the attack, President Putin ordered regular, large-scale strikes designed to cripple Ukraine's combat capabilities, signaling a shift towards sustained, high-intensity operations. Words alone are not enough, Lavrov declared, a stark statement that underscored Russia's readiness to translate rhetoric into military escalation rather than rely solely on diplomatic protest. According to Lavrov, Russia intends to hit facilities and supply nodes that directly sustain Ukraine's battlefield operations, targeting the logistics and command systems that keep Kyiv's forces fighting. The Kremlin has promised repeated, massive strikes as payback for the drone assault on Moscow, vowing sustained reprisals meant both to punish and to deter further attacks. Lavrov added that Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan is actively engaging with Moscow in efforts to broker peace, indicating parallel diplomatic channels working even as military tensions rise. Putin's new directive explicitly places Ukraine's key military infrastructure in Russia's crosshairs, prioritizing strikes on command centers, ammunition depots, and supply routes to degrade Kyiv's warfighting capacity.
Еще с целым рядом наших представителей.
Hakan Fidan has been in contact not only with me and with Igor Kostiko, but also with a number of our representatives, both in the Foreign Intelligence Service and in the presidential administration. He was formerly the head of the Turkish intelligence service. He has many contacts and a lot of experience. And, of course, President Putin received him yesterday. One of the main topics on the international agenda was precisely that Turkey had confirmed its interest not merely in providing a venue, but in being of assistance, should both sides consider that such an opportunity exists. I believe that all the right words are being said, but I have long been convinced that words alone are not enough. It is no coincidence that some time ago, following yet another escapade of the Kyiv terrorists, the president announced that we would now be carrying out massive, coordinated strikes on a regular basis. These strikes will target objectives whose condition directly affects the combat effectiveness of the armed forces of Ukraine. This task has been set by the Supreme Commander-in-Chief. Our armed forces are carrying it out and will continue to do so.
Russia launched a wave of ballistic missiles and drone strikes on Kyiv in an overnight assault on June 18th, marking a fresh escalation in its air campaign against Ukraine. Explosions were reported across the capital shortly after midnight as missiles approached the city and air raid sirens were activated in multiple districts. A second wave of attacks followed hours later, with Russian strike drones targeting Kyiv and surrounding regions in a sustained barrage. Officials confirmed that Sumy, Poltava, and other regions also came under fire, showing the strike expanded beyond the capital. The assault comes just days after a previous Russian strike on Kyiv killed 5 people and injured 35 in one of the latest major attacks. That earlier strike also damaged the historic Kyiv-Pechorsk Lavrov Monastery, a UNESCO World Heritage Site with centuries of cultural significance. The latest attacks are being seen by Ukrainian officials as part of a broader pattern of sustained pressure on urban and energy infrastructure. Russia's defense ministry claimed the strikes used high-precision weapons and long-range drones targeting what it described as military-linked energy sites. Moscow said it struck the Borispol 2 fuel depot near Kyiv and the Zacharino oil refinery in the Poltava region during the overnight operation. Local officials in Poltava confirmed damage to industrial and energy facilities as Ukrainian air defense units continued interception efforts. Ukraine on June 18 struck multiple targets across Russia, including a major oil refinery, according to Reuters reports on the attack. Footage showed thick columns of smoke rising above the Moscow refinery complex on June 18 following the reported drone strike. The strike marked the second attack in 2 days on the key facility located in Moscow's Kapotnya district. The scale of the attack caught many Muscovites off guard and reportedly triggered panic across social media platforms. Russia said its air defenses destroyed 555 Ukrainian drones across multiple regions during the overnight assault. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin said air defense units shot down 180 drones that were headed toward the Russian capital. Sobyanin acknowledged that several drones still reached the Moscow oil refinery despite extensive defense efforts. The Guardian reported that at least 7 drones appeared to penetrate Moscow's air defense shield during the attack. An earlier Ukrainian drone strike had reportedly shut down operations at the Moscow refinery before the latest attack. The strikes added to growing damage across Russia's energy sector caused by Kyiv's expanding long-range drone campaign. According to The Guardian, Moscow is preparing to import fuel by sea to ease shortages caused by refinery damage. The attack followed a major Russian barrage of ballistic missiles and drones launched against Kyiv in recent days. Vladimir Putin had previously warned Ukraine of impending systemic strikes across the country in response to attacks. The attack came hours after G7 leaders vowed to boost support for Ukraine in its confrontation with Russia. The Ukrainian strike also came after the US and Iran signed an MOU to halt the war and negotiate a final deal.